Okay, so here's my podcast. I'll be doing topic one with like water for chocolate. And before getting into my podcast, I'd like to label out first the theories that I'm going to use, which are going to be Stuart Hall's third definition that we use in class that revolves around the relations of control and subordination that are constantly shifting, which is basically just the ongoing process of the concept of the hegemony offered by Antonio Gramsci, in which we have a triangle of power or a hegemony that dictates the morals, the values, and the education of society, as well as what they are to follow, and the working class, as they are outside the sphere of influence and have no real decision as to what are the values or education or morals of society. So they are constantly fighting against these standards set by the hegemony to either accept or reject them. And this is like the essence of popular culture. So two of the characters in the film with who I identified are Dr. John Brown and Tita. I identify with Dr. John Brown relatively because he's one of the more healthier characters in the story. His perception of the time period and the the essence of what he thinks popular culture is, I think I really resonate with. Um, he is the good parts of popular culture in the sense that he can think for himself as to whether he accepts the values set in place. And the pro of having him represent the idea of popular culture is that he doesn't always he doesn't always agree with what he sees. An example of this is that he doesn't agree with Tita having to take care of his mother and not getting married as she is the youngest. And because of his Native American grandmother and his respect for Tita's choices, he is against the hegemony and the values it teaches, which creates an imagined community in itself, in his own home and in his vicinity. An example of this is when he takes Tita away from the power of the hegemony, that being her mother, and it's contrary to the idea that the hegemony practices of the time period where he doesn't want to force Tita to marry her, even though he has um, dominance over her, but rather he values her feelings, and later values her decision to not marry him. In this imaginary community, he holds above all the importance of science, but also the importance of the values of his grandmother, that being her idea of energies and the analogy for fire matches, in which you should strike a match at one time and not all at once together because it causes a big um, burning of two souls, which can be very destructive. Um, a con of this being of him being represented as popular culture is that he can be considered part of the hegemony as he is wealthy and does have a high status job, that being a doctor or someone with prominence. Um, while he does fight the standards of the hegemony, um, he isn't necessarily part of the working class, which is based on our definition. He is unsupported to the hegemony that he is part of. One of the pros of having Tita represent popular culture is that she is practically the embodiment of it. She is always constantly fighting with the hegemon of her house, her mom, and is supported to the traditions of society and her mother and her values. Um, the cons of having Tita represent popular culture is that her character's representation of culture is very one-sided, I think, because it focuses too much on the rebel aspect and not so much on the community building aspect or the bigger picture of changing society or the culture of her household. Um, I think I relate with Tita as a character because she really thinks like how I do. She analyzes why things are in a certain way and how that can affect certain people who maybe don't have maybe don't have a prominent voice. Um, but what also makes her relate to makes me relate to Tita is her willingness to make sacrifices for family, even though it might hurt her chances with Pedro or her life. You know, such as how she breastfed her Pedro's first child. She kept her thoughts about Pedro's marriage to herself and not forgetting to teach herself how to cook. All things that could have negatively affect her. But what draws me most to her is how she uses her cooking to tell a story, or otherwise how she uses food and an idea of an imagined community to progress the story, or how her cooking directly affects what happens, such as her making the rose petal dish, causing her duties to leave the family for a while, later coming back, or how her wedding cake with her tears caused the guests to throw up and left her sister unable to connect with Pedro or make love with him for a long period while. But the ultimate cherry on top is that her cookbook has been passed on for generations. And this in itself serves as a magic community in a sense because it is now a tradition, and the folklore surrounding her story and what her family went through is now something that her family follows. But a con of Tita's Magic Community is that because her family is the only one that has the cookbook, it's only limited to her family, and it is not stretched into the entire nation, and it is not stretched to the entire nation as the definition of Magic Community is supposed to.